Thank you very much for coming on this lovely Friday evening. And, I'm really very fortunate to have Dr. Dorjee here. He is actually on holiday, and when I heard he was here on holiday, I sort of grabbed the opportunity to and force him to come and speak to us at the Dr. Dorjee is really one of the very well-known figures in Tibetan medicine, and he's not only teacher, but also he's a practitioner. Last year there was a conference on Tibetan medicine at the Toronto University at the Munk Center, and the Dr. Dorjee was one of the keynote speakers, and he's have traveled to most of the Western countries and in South Asia, participated in numerous international conferences on medicine, and particularly on Tibetan medicine. And Dr. Dorjee is trained under the guidance of Dr. Tenzin Chöda, who was the foremost teachers of Tibetan medicine and also was a personal physician to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And Dr. Dorjee is currently the chairman of the Central Council of Tibetan Medicine based in Dharamsala, which has now been established as a central sort of regulatory, authoritative, professional body of traditional Tibetan medicine practitioner. Today, Dr. Dorjee's talk will be essentially focusing on essence of Tibetan medicines, and second part he will look at the application and use of Tibetan medicines among Tibetan refugees in India. Thank you very much, Doctor.
It's okay.
It was on.
What?
Have you lost it?
Yeah. There's loose connection. 도저 던저 좀 된데 저도 되게 근데 동일 교 도숨에서 상계 매니라 밴드 라이브라 찬스로. With this customary prayers to the Medicinal Buddha, I would like to say hello, Tashi Delek, and good evening to everybody here.
It's coming, sorry.
It's okay.
Strange. I hope I don't have to get up and switch that on all the time. Yeah, it's coming. I think it's 7.
Okay.
We can do countdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there. Yes, I'm sorry, we can't switch the light off because we're doing a podcast of Dr. Dorjee's talk, and we need the light. So.
First of all, I would like to really thank Dr. Sering Shakya for giving me this special honor of being here in the prestigious university. I'm really look forward to this wonderful evening here, and also my friend Dr. Mr. Pemten, and whom I've been meeting at least after 25 years. We were the same school in Central School for Tibetans in Mussoorie. Now here, coming to Vancouver, we have met for the first time after probably 25 years. So he was helping me seeing the Vancouver properly. Otherwise, I wouldn't be really able to know the Vancouver properly. So it was really pleasure coming over here, and I don't know how many of you are really familiar with the Tibetan medicines. Maybe we have our Tibetan friends also who are already very familiar with the Tibetan medicines, and I would like to really go a bit, slow, and so that you understand the essence a little better. And I'm also not really a very good kind of speaker or a teacher, but I have a problem once I go into the subject, then sometimes I have a problem stopping myself. And also really I find it difficult to come out of the subject also. But anyway, we will stick to 45 minutes. Well,
Sorry, again, I don't know what's happening with this morning. Not a theist.
But this is okay with me. This is okay with me. I don't like really PowerPoint presentation because it sometimes tends to, take out my concentration also, the flow of the talk. So if it's okay with you, but if it comes in between, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll go ahead with this. Well, Tibetan medicines, as probably most of you have some idea, it's the one of the most ancient and traditional cultural heritage of Tibet, which has been practicing in Tibet for almost like 700 to 800 years. But there are a lot of the arguments and counter arguments as to the real origination of Tibetan medicines. And there are actually two school of thoughts. One is the born kind of our Tibetans' native traditions, which believes that the system of the Tibetan medicine has originated almost during much before the Buddha came to India, and we still have some oral kind of traditions which traces back to what we call it Shangshung Pen traditions. It's a native Tibetan traditions, and another school of thought, like the Buddhist school of thought, which believes that Tibetan medical system, in essence, is a teaching of the Buddha himself in the manifestation of the medicinal Buddha. But most scholarly point of view is that it's a mixture of both. It's a mixture of both, and definitely, a lot of our the Tibetan scholars and celebrated Tibetan physicians have taken their own time, some energy to bring out what we call it, the Tibetan medical system, which in essence is the harmonious blending of all the Asian system of medicines. During the 7th century, 8th century, the Tibetan kings, the successive Tibetan kings, have taken this as their main responsibility to patronize the Tibetan medical systems. And accordingly, they have invited many celebrated physicians from all over the neighboring countries, including China, Mongolia, even India, and from Kashmir, from Greek, so on and so forth. So in we say 9th century, when the Yudok Yönden Gombo, whom we regard as the father of the Tibetan medicines, and during the first conference in the Tibetan medicines that was held in the Samye monastery in Tibet. Samye monastery was also one of the oldest and first monastery in Tibet. That he took out all the essence of the Chinese medicines, of the Indian Ayurvedic systems of medicines, and Greek systems of medicines, and even some essence from the Kashmiri kind of the local systems of medicines, and all of them put together into the on top of the medical system what we have already been practicing. So it has become well-known kind of the discipline of medical systems, which was grouped into the essence, and comprising of 156 chapters, and what we now call as the 4 great tantras, or the 4 treatises. It's called Gyushi. So Gyushi is the main classical and most authoritative kind of text of the Tibetan medical system, which from the 7th century down to still, now in the present day world, most of the Tibetan doctors, they study this as the main source book. And then passed down through the centuries, from the teacher to the disciples, it has been, enjoying what we call as an uninterrupted lineage of the teachings. And even the Dalai Lamas, the 5th Dalai Lama established the first ever kind of Tibetan medical college in Lhasa, what we call it as Chokpuri Medical Colleges. And the 13th Dalai Lama himself also established what we call the Lhasa Minzikang. There's a house of the Tibetan medicines and astrology. And the 14th Dalai Lama himself has established the Tibetan Medical Center, Minzikang, in Dharamsala in 1961 to help preserve and promote the unique systems of medicines. So this is in a way a brief, kind of historical accounts of how Tibetan medicines kind of came into being. Now, when you say what exactly is the Tibetan medicines, then we say is the Tibetan medicine is a system where both medical science and spirituality, the Buddhist concept, Buddhist philosophy, a combination of these two, where we consider it as both the physical body systems, the mind, the spiritual, the social, everything into one kind of the holistic system. So where we consider as the Mina Nedang Nawa Sowadang Sering Chonor Deva Drubechiris. Mina Ned means how to prevent the disease, how to stay fit. It's the most important thing. Nawa Sowa is the treatment of the diseases. Sering Chon, and what could be the ultimate aim of the medical system? Sering, to attain longevity, to perfect health, longevity, prosperity, and happiness. And this is actually the main aim or you say objectives of the Tibetan medicines. Now, when you come to the concept of the Tibetan, or exactly is the principal concept of the Tibetan medicines, then it is actually the concept which revolves around the what we call it a theory of three humors, 5 cosmophysical elements. 3 humors is like lung, ti, pagan, which we roughly translate as wind energy, tiba energy, and tiba energy, and pagan energy. And the 5 cosmophysical elements, that's earth, water, fire, air, and space. So we say in our body systems, all these 3 principal kind of energies, lung, tiba, pagan, and the 5 cosmophysical elements have to be present in a right kind of proportions. Then only we can say we are in a perfect state of health or harmony. When these kind of the proportions of the 3 principal energies and the 5 cosmophysical elements are.
Can you just give an English rough translation of the 3 energy, lung, ti, pagan?
Lung, tiba, pagan. That's called wind. We roughly translate wind energy as the lung, and tiba energy is the bile energy, bile, B-I-L-E, bile energy, which comes from the gallbladder and the liver. But this is a kind of gross translations, but it really doesn't mean that tiba energy is the bile energy. Tiba energy or the bile energy is in essence is all the kind of metabolic activities of your body system, the heat energy of our body system, heat energy, and and also the. I'm sorry we are not able to say this, but then see all this. We say that the 5 cosmophysical elements is the most important thing which we need to consider, not only in the medical systems but also as a way of the living, because as I was telling you earlier, the essence of even the Buddha's teaching is on the 4 kind of noble truths. Accordingly, the medical system, the teachings, the medicines are based on these 4 noble truths. That is the truth of the suffering, the truth of the origin of the suffering, truth of the cessation of the suffering, truth of the way to the kind of end the suffering. So we, Tibetan medicine believes that it is very important, first of all, to understand the suffering, before actually treating it. So suffering, understanding the suffering is very important. Otherwise, most of us tend to say that, okay, I'm when you have some kind of suffering or disease or problem, you say, I'm really a God-fearing person. I'm doing everything right. I'm eating right. My lifestyle is good. But why this suffering? We really don't know how to, counteract the suffering. Then we have a lot of problems with this. Once you understand the nature of the suffering, the truth of the suffering, then it becomes much more easier for us to, face the suffering. And it's also important to understand secondly, the cause of the suffering. Otherwise, we are only looking at the suffering as a very superficial level when we really don't understand the main cause of the suffering, different cause of the suffering. So this is also one of the very unique features of the Tibetan medicine, in that it teaches us not only the kind of common treatment of the diseases, but as to the whole understanding the life itself, understanding this disease, the sickness, the suffering, and how to overcome it, and how you yourself can help yourself to increase your own kind of human consciousness to some the better levels. So this is all part of the teachings. When we say to understand the cause of the sufferings, it's a very, very big subject. It's a very, very big subject. We believe that Tibetan medical system believe that the name of the disease are not important. There may be thousands of diseases, it's not important. What is most important is to understand the disease, the cause of the disease. And according to Tibetan medical system, we say that marikpa, the ignorance, is the main cause of the disease. And ignorance literally means not knowing the non-existence of the self. We as a self actually doesn't really exist. Dr. Dorjee as in substance doesn't really exist. But I exist as a kind of original interdependence. We are all related. So therefore, this marikpa, this kind of what we call as ignorance, gives rise to a lot of what we call as mental poisons, or the negative mental afflictions. Like three important mental poisons, like Dorjee, Shedang, Timuksum. Dorjee, Shedang, Timuksum. Dorjee is something like, attachment, lust. Shedang is anger, hatred, aversions. And Timuk is something like delusions or obscurations. So all these are the negative mental factors which gives rise to all forms of diseases. And how, when you trace out how these three principal energy, lung, ti, peken, comes into being, is the Dorjee, especially the desire or attachment or the lust, we say gives rise to lung energy, or the lung kind of disorders, wind disorders. When you have a lot of attachment, lust, and when you are not able to meet that, then you suffer from a lot of even mental problems, psychiatric problems. Then you can run into some stress, tensions, depressions. All these problems are part of the lung kind of diseases. And when you have anger, aversions, hatred, and when you have this anger, your whole face becomes red. You have some kind of lingering pain around your liver in regions, because when you're in a state of anger, and that gives rise to tripa, the heat energy, the heat kind of the problems in the body systems. And when timuk is when you are in a state of total kind of rest or inactivity, like a pig. We say like a pig. Timuk is the pig is a symbol of timuk. Pig always eat, sleep, and do nothing. That we suffer from a lot of diseases which we call as pagan energy. So these are the the product or the five constant physical elements. And 5 constitutional physical element we call Jungo Nga is the most important kind of phenomena in which even the living beings, non-living beings, are composed of. Our body system is also composed of 5 constitutional physical elements: earth, water, fire, air, and space. Earth rises to solidity of the body systems. Water gives rise to the cohesion in the body systems. Without water, there will be no cohesions. And fire gives rise to maturity. Everything matures because of the fire. And air gives rise to the development inside. Further, and the space gives rise to the, provides all round kind of, the energy, what we call as a constant energy. So even even our medicines, even our food, even our disease, our inner body system, what we call it, microcosmic body systems, or outer kind of, the environments, like we call it Mother Nature, the macrocosmic kind of, the world, also composed of these 5 constitutional physical elements. So we believe that we have a direct relationship with our Mother Nature also. And this is a part of the, concept of the Tibetan medicine. So whatever happens to the external environment, our Mother Nature, have a direct effect over our body systems. So therefore, when we talk in terms of the cosmological perspective, we believe that we as an individual have a lot to play an important role in the betterment of our society, our family, our community, because Tibetan medicine believes that disease is not a personal matter, it's not a personal problem. Is the kind of property of the whole kind of the bigger kind of issues. When we have a disease in the family, disease in the family, like say father or mother, all the health of the family gets affected. When the family's health gets affected, societies gets affected, and then community, then state, the nation, everything gets affected. So in this, Tibetan medicine teaches us how to be more responsible, not only with your own kind of state of health, but create a kind of, the kind of environment where all the, sentient beings, our, all the Chu, what do we call it? Ne and Chu. Chu is the, sentient beings in, who lives in this, in a Mother Nature or external environment, which we call as a Chu. So there should be this kind of, dynamic relationship and harmony. Then only we can achieve what we call as a perfect health or quality kind of health. But it was clearly mentioned in the 8th century medical texts, not only the medical texts, but many other kind of, the commentaries, as also the, Buddhist texts, which we found as a kind of, thermas, which are hidden in the, the mountains, in the caves, or in the, many sacred places, clearly mentions the problem of man-made problems. Tungen nyingma tukju karal tu minam sojul hasin tukjengis. Sule nyene parba tashiba mingdam babgor nyesung majishin. Leji ngaje tamar babdu nas jungbun namyo lobor yendo tok mamo khande nenge yemsubek mudik dugwe zeji jorwa ches. Means mudik dugba. Who's mudik dugba? Mudik dugba. Now people who are engaged in making a lot of nuclear proliferations, bombs and a lot of other the toxic chemical things. This was mentioned in the classical medical texts, which can trace back to 9th century. And mamo kinde nange once because of our greed, as the, or what do we call it, slow degeneration of the values in the human society now, degeneration of the values. People will engage in a lot of non-virtuous deeds, even sacrileges of a lot of things, even so many things which I don't want to go into detail. But in essence, it's essence that because of our own greed, because of our own kind of the, what do you call it, the misbehavior, we have started really indiscriminately exploiting our own Mother Nature. which in turn will anger our Mother Nature, and which in turn will send as a curse, as a wrath of the Mother Nature, a lot of epidemic diseases. In our medical text, it was clearly mentioned 18 infectious diseases. Even the plagues, the SARS, the smallpox, so many, all these infectious diseases. So we can find now, when we just retrospectively, we find that a lot of things which are made by ourselves, which I think we can definitely find out solutions or some answers or some understanding from those kind of teachings, which were even can be traced back to almost 8th century, 9th centuries. So this is part of what we call as concept of the Tibetan medicines. Now, having spoken about the Marikpa and its kind of influences in our body systems, we say that okay, Marikpa is there, as a root cause of the diseases. Now, which we say that like a bird, which it flies throughout the length and breadth of the sky, it cannot escape from its shadow. We as a human being cannot be happy, cannot be healthy until and unless we get rid of the Marikpa or our negative mental afflictions. So that fundamental suffering is already there. Fundamental suffering. Now, there should be some kind of causative factors which normally helps to materialize this fundamental suffering into the diseases, which we say 4 causative factors. This is the Tu, Dun, Se, Ju, Shi. Tu is a seasonal factor, Dun is a mental factor, Se is a dietary factor, and Ju is a lifestyles. So these 4 things are very, very important, which we have to keep in mind. Tu, Dun, Se, Ju, Shi. Every season brings a different kind of changes in our body systems, and accordingly changes of different kind of the diseases. Every season has different diseases, but we normally don't care much. Our behavior habit, our eating habit actually should be changing according to changing seasons, but we don't do that. Throughout the year we eat fish, throughout the year we eat pork, throughout the year, But then, Tibetan medicine teaches that according to the changing seasons, there will be a change in our environment, there will be a change in the cosmic factors, there will be a change in your body system. Accordingly, you have to change your diet, you have to change your lifestyles. Even the sexual behavior also, in the season, how you really cope up with all these things, different in different seasons. So that is the seasonal factor. And mental factor is one of the most important thing where Tibetan medicines can play a very, plays a very significant role, which is actually also an essence of the interactions of the both in medical science and the Buddhist, the teachings of the Buddhist philosophy. Yes, particularly this the Marikpa and the ignorance and the three mental afflictions and all the negative kind of afflictions. And it was also very clearly mentioned in the medical system. There was what we call as a subject, but a different subject on the mental health, which is called Jungbu Nyoje Sadang Ludunga. Nyoje, Jungbu means it's something like a negative spirits, a negative kind of energy, which plagues us. We are not only the kind of beings who is enjoying living in this mother kind of nature or the earth. There are many other subtle living beings or sentient beings whom we don't see. When we don't see, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, but we can feel their kind of the effect. So sometimes consciously or unconsciously, when you try to show disrespect or what do you call it, cause some kind of disturbances or in their own kind of state of the harmony, then we get sick. And that problem, that suffering, no matter how much medicines you take, it's not going to have any important help. Nyoje is something, nyo is a state of psychosis, a psychiatric kind of problems. Jeje is something like, Alzheimer's kind of diseases, where we totally, forget ourselves. Our mind is being totally ruled by, some other kind of beings. Your mind is not yourself. You don't know even who is yourself. Jeje. And disease like leprosy, even the epileptic kind of, the problems, epilepsy problem. All these are part of the mental kind of health, in which the Tibetan medicine deals, in great length. And food, very important. We say that mine thamche senei, tane thamche yungne, which means that whatever we eat, you're very, familiar with the knowing that we are what we eat, So food is very important. Food is very important. Unless you don't know the art of the, staying healthy because, the healthy uses of the food, then we have a problem. So we have what we call it, understanding the different kind of nature of the food, different taste of the food, even the different taste, different potency, different properties of the milk of the every animals, meat of the every animals, different taste, different potencies of different kind of green vegetable items. You can't say that, okay, cabbage, the lettuce or the spinaches were good for everything. It may be very good for you, it may be very bad for you, depending on your own body constitutions, depending on your own state of the balance of the five physical elements in your body systems. So we cannot say that green tea is a perfect recipe. Green tea is antioxidant. Everybody should be taking it. It doesn't work that way. We should know the taste, the potency, the therapeutic qualities of each and every food or each and every substances. Then relate that to your own body constitutions. Whether you are, the stress type of, the personality, whether you are more aggressive, more kind of heaty, more kind of personality, or they are more boring or more, what do you call it, what do we call it, sedentary life, inactivity. Accordingly, the food has to be considered. Then the compatibility with the food. Now in the modern day society, I'm not really, I'm against this kind of food, but when you go to the supermarkets, we find a different kind of very, the kind of delicious and fashionable and very good-looking kind of food. You have bread, then you have cheese, then you have salmon, and on top of that you have egg. On top of that you have. So it looks good, but we don't know whether the fish is compatible with the egg or not. Whether the curd which you are using or dressing which you are using is compatible with the, the spinach or not. Whether the bread is compatible with, So these things we don't consider. In the Tibetan medical text, these things are given in great detail. We say that kimje shatang shose savatang means the kimje sha is like chicken. Chicken does not go well with the yogurts and with the curd. Kimje shatang shose dengzi mama shnyam terminju, and particularly the heavy kind of food items or red meats, doesn't really go with the Coca-Cola. Doesn't really go with any kind of the oily food substances. It can create a blockages in the body systems. Setang chola mitun temba puge yulam nebe negela mungjung kang da hindu tubarche monge name puga dakwe dewarju means when we adhere to the improper foods, improper lifestyles, this creates a kind of a blockage in our body systems. After all, our body system is a constant flow of the energies from the different chakras, the energies, the subtle energies. It's all these flow of the energy, like a traffic systems. When they flow in its own kind of directions, then we have a very smooth flow of the traffic, no problem. But when there's blockages in the traffic, then you can see the commotion, see the disturbances. Similarly, because of the wrong food, wrong lifestyles, it creates all the blockages. And these kind of blockages as the fundamental kind of cause of the diseases, even the cancer, even many other chronic kind of diseases. So therefore, the compatibility of the food is also very important. You say, stomach is very important. Stomach is like a like a fertile land. If we have a fertile land, we have a fertile, very good harvest. Similarly, we have a good stomach, good digestive system. When we can digest, assimilate what we eat, then we have a perfect health. When everything blocks, from the beginning, then you have a lot of other chronic diseases. And the chronic diseases are basically the cause of a lot of other, many complications, many further kind of diseases. If we have 10 minutes, then please. And so therefore, the food is very important factor. Compatibility. And how to, let's say, we have, stomach can be divided into four different chambers. Two of the chambers should be filled with the solid food. Third chamber should be filled with the liquid foods. Fourth chamber should be left empty for the digestion, the circulation, the energy to flow, and then assimilate properly. But we have a tendency to fill up all the four chambers, and then we have a problem with the obesity, which is now the one of the very kind of difficult kind of issues which are facing in the modern society. And this is all not knowing the kind of the proper the dietary kind of regimens. And all these obese people can really some understanding of the how to look at the food in a different frame of mind and understand how much food to be taken, and in what time the food should be taken. All this because after all, we as a body, the human being, as I told you earlier, it runs through a kind of flow of the consciousness in a particular kind of what do you call it, in a very synchronizing factor, like a biological clock. And when this clock becomes the disturbed, then we have sometimes even what we call it irreversible kind of diseases. People getting, all of a sudden he was perfectly healthy, but he walked in some kind of calling centers where he has to they walk throughout the night and sleeps throughout the day. All of a sudden his biological clock changes. After 3 months he had a problem, and he was diagnosed to have some kind of very serious kind of blood disorders, which I have seen myself and many of my patients. When you trace out the origin of the diseases, how really he was perfectly healthy. How come? So therefore, it is very important. And Cholam, a lifestyle, proper exercises, proper breathing kind of exercise, especially, is very important in the kind of important part of our way of living, and particularly the breathing exercises. There are also many kind of some intricate exercises, sometimes very simple exercises in the form of the meditations, in the form of the breathings, which all the all Tibetans consciously, unconsciously they're doing. But sometimes we tend to think that okay, this is a part of our rituals, part of our habit, which we're doing the prostrations and all these things. But if you look at it very seriously, we are actually doing all those kind of the lifestyle regimens which were actually mentioned in the medical text, and actually trying to find out just 15 minutes, 20 minutes time in the morning, 15 minutes, 20 minutes time in the evening to go through all the simple kind of regimens makes a lot of differences. And then of course there are Thambal Haje and Jigden Miche, which is Thambal Jigden Miche is something which is the conduct of the basic human beings, how to conduct yourself in such a way that you can qualify as actually as a responsible human being. But in order to elevate yourself much above the kind of human, then you have a Thambal Hache. in which you have what we call say the practice, Buddha Dharma, and follow its kind of various pathways, various teachings. So these are part of the what we call it, the four causative factors which is responsible for bringing the disease, the kind of in active kind of forms. Now, if you say, okay, now how when you have this, the disease in its active form, then what are the things which you can do? Then we have in the medicine teaches said the Sejje Menjish. Then you have the treatment of the diseases through the first of all through the simple application of the food. Then if the food changes in the food doesn't help, then lifestyles. If the lifestyle doesn't help, for example, if you have a common cold, just a mild common cold, in the medical text suggests that you take boiled hot water. Then you have a feeling, oh, is it medicine? Boil hot water? But it says you take simple boiled hot water. And if you take boiled hot water 2-3 times a day, within 2-3 days the common cold goes. Instead, if you go to the doctor, then get injections, get tablets, then you have, although it goes within 3-4 days, but because of the side effects, because it was not treated properly, even if you have a fever, there are 16 different types of fever you have to consider. Fever has to be matured. Fever has to be, it has to be in its proper kind of locations. Then only if you give the treatment, then you have a total and holistic kind of, the kind of cure of the fever. Otherwise, fever, temporarily you subdue the fever, you suppress the fever, but it comes out in a different kind of way. And it goes to your joints. You have, then after probably after several days or several weeks or several months, you come out with having arthritis. So it's a kind of vicious cycles when you really don't know how to proper approach of the treatments. Then medicines. Medicine also has to be given a very varying degree of potencies, and it has to consider its taste, potencies, therapeutic values. We consider the effects of the medicines through its own taste, through its own potencies. Basically, all we say there are no medicines, there are no substances on this earth which do not have any medicinal values. But we should know how to extract the best properties out of medicines. When you say that, okay, neem trees is the best for any infections, or even for jaundice. And if you just go and take out the neem leaves and you eat it, you have a flatulence, you have a gastric, you have a lot of complications. You can't do that. There should be a proper way of plucking the neem leaves, or processing the neem leaves, taking out its own kind of what we call raw herbal kind of you would say raw herbal kind of poisons, removing the poisons, toxic out of the herbs. Then it can be used as a medicines. And then if the medicines doesn't help, then we have what we call it the external therapies, which we have in two different, Jamje and Subje. In the Jamje factor, we have these, the wellness kind of, especially relaxation kind of therapies, like the massage, meridian massage. It's not a kind of the oil massage, but meridian massage, where you look at the different body constitutions, different meridians, whichever the body parts, whichever the meridians are affected, then you use a different oil, different kind of oils, or different kind of substances to activate that blockages, to stimulate that kind of blockages, and to bring actually a kind of total the balance in that. And also the subject. Then you have what we call even the moxibustions, heat treatment. You have golden needle therapies. We have the cupping therapies. Some of them looks very, very simple. Some of them looks very rudimentary also. Looks very simple, but one application of cupping is enough to kind of alleviate instantly your stomach pain. Severe stomach pain, you don't know what to do. One cupping of that, even a few seconds of time, is enough to give you a total relief. when you are suffering with the severe attacks of asthma, and you cannot just breathe out, and one application of cupping is enough to give you an instant relief, which are very simple, very practical. So these are, what we call it, the Menjeshi is part of the treatment kind of approaches. And the diagnosis, you see, diagnosis of the Tibetan medicines, which I personally feel that can really contribute or exchange, especially with our, the medical fraternities, like even the Chinese systems of medicines, Ayurvedic systems of medicines, and they do have this, the pulse diagnosis, urine analysis. But during my 20 years of the practice of Tibetan medicines, I personally find that pulse analysis is the urine analysis most elaborately mentioned and most effective diagnostic systems, which almost all of us profess to be a healer or helper or whatever, doctors, or so that it really helps you to kind of understand the disease better. When you're looking at your tongue, looking at the urine analysis, you may feel really very, the kind of awkward looking at the Tibetan doctor smelling the urine. Looking at the urine. You would see that, oh, he should have gone to the very sophisticated laboratory, with a lot of things inside the laboratory. It takes 2 hours, 3 hours to get the diagnosis. But Tibetan doctors can look at the urine like this and see what you have eaten a couple of days earlier, what you have eaten now, whether you have an indigestion, whether you have a kidney problem. Oh, you must be having kidney, severe urine infections. Just by looking at the color of the urine and the sediments, formation of the sediments, and the bubble formations, smell of the urine, different colors of the urine, Though it looks very, very, very simple, very rudimentary, it gives you a lot of information of the state of your health. And every 15 days, you come out with your urine sample, and doctors will be able to see, you yourself will be able to see remarkable changes, whether you are, getting better or whether you are getting worse. So it's like a silver kind of flame in which you can see your own state of health. Similarly, the pulse, though it looks very simple, looking at the radial artery, and Tibetan doctors are really able to feel. This is my personal experience. Able to feel, it's just like scanning your whole body systems within a couple of minutes, silently. We try to go through the all kind of the chakras and the energies and organs and the organelles of your body systems, and try to find out what exactly is the problem, the imbalances. With the pulse analysis, you'll be able to find out what kind of personality you are. What kind of, the disease which you're most likely to suffer. What kind of disease you have suffered earlier. Now, looking at the present kind of state of health, what kind of problems you are going to have 1 year later, a couple of years later. And just by merely feeling the pulse, all the kind of prescriptions of the medicines immediately flashes across your eye. You are able to write on the prescription, not strong medications, not strong medicines, but balanced medicines. Oh, this patient is having what we call as a wind energy kind of constitution. So he should be eating this kind of food so that it helps to, especially in the form of soup, mixed vegetable soup, crushed bone kind of soup, or some samba soup with some coriander leaves. Coriander leaves, it's very simple. So, and also not only that, it's the hidden diseases, whatever the diseases which are hidden in the body systems, and it's cause of the kind of the cause of the actions of the disease, the working mechanisms of the disease, could be also traced through the kind of pulse analysis. And there are many, what we call it, 7 extraordinary pulse, where doctors could be able to, even if your daughter is sick, some thousands of miles away, you look at the pulse of your mother, and you can tell the kind of state of health of your daughter. Similarly, there are many marvelous things which, earlier, when as a student, I used to find it really stupid. Oh, how come? You know, when you look at the father's kind of pulse, you could able to. But then, when the more information you have, then you really understand. That is also walking, you know, kind of perfect walking mechanisms or the interrelationship of your, you know, the planetary motions, the seasonal factors, environmental factors, and its relation to your body organs. As for example, your liver. No, liver is, you know, in wood in nature. Element is wood, and element wood is prospers more during the summer when there's more vegetations. You know, so accordingly, you know, then you establish that kind of relationship. Do you get my point? Tell me, you know, the element kind of, you know, the wood, the organ, the liver, and then the season, the, you know, summer, you know, and accordingly, what you also what we call calculate the kind of friend foy mother-son kind of relationship. You know, all these calculations. The mother of the wood is you know, metal, and mother of the metal is this. So accordingly, you establish mother relationship is better, you know, friend relationship is better, but enemy relationship is, you know, worse. So accordingly, you can sometimes when you feel, we could feel, he said, okay, you're going to have some problems, but then when you tell the patient says, I'm absolutely fine. But we, you know, try to advise that, okay, for a couple of days, don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Just sit where you are, you know, because your pulse shows something very extraordinary. You know, extraordinary. And there are many situations in which some of, you know, our even you know, the Dr. Chodak, whom the late personal physician of His Holiness, whom I have a, you know, fortune of, you know, accompanying him many times, so that he told one of his patients that you should not, you know, go travel now. You should not travel. If you travel, then you have a problem. But the patient said, you know, tomorrow I have a flight, and he said that you should not. And then he told me that a couple of days later there was a problem with the flight, you know. So that kind of subtle, what do you call it, the message the doctors are able to pick up through their own kind of, you know, their fingers. So these are the, you know, what do we call it, so wonderful kind of contributions of the, you know, the understanding the walking mechanisms or the walking of the pulse, in which I think, as personally, I will always kind of try to, you know, emphasize that everyone, you know, every healers, every practitioner should know, so that we also, you know, kind of minimize our dependence on the sophisticated machines. You know, more sophisticated the, you know, the diagnostic machines, more distance is created between the, you know, patient and the and the doctors. You know, so these are the very simple things which really, you know, though looks very simple, but it really gives you a total relief, gives you a kind of what we call holistic kind of, you know, the relief or the quality kind of relief. And that, and you know, the following that, this it's also to say that you know, Tibetan medicines enjoys a very sound relationship with the astronomy or astrological kind of, you know, factors. That is why our institution in Dharamsala is also called Medicinal, the house of medicines and the astrology. You know, so you establish this kind of. If you look at this, people may say, okay, what is astrology? You do the astrology, you are not a doctor. You know, but when we really look at the kind of, you know, the day-to-day activities of, you know, even your body systems or everything, then you, let's say, for example, we as a Tibetan doctor, even with the collection of the herbs, we have to calculate which date, which month. Okay, the 8th month of the lunar calendar, it's very suitable of the collection of this specific type of herbs. You know, and then that herb is collected during that particular season, and that very month, when the certain, you know, the star is ruling the kind of the, you know, ruling the kind of a planet, you know, then you, in the middle of the night, with the intense kind of lunar energy, you prepare that medicines with the chantings, with herbs, so that you have the raw kind of, you know, the what do we call it, energy, the cooling energy, you know, unadulterated natural cooling energy, natural kind of healing energy. So some of the herbs, of course, has to be, the dried, has to be prepared in a very hot sun, or even all these things. Even when you're going for a surgical kind of interventions, you need to do the astrological calculations to ascertain your own kind of life force energy. Where is your life force energy is located? Tomorrow you're going for a surgery, especially heart transplantation, or even a bypass surgery. But tomorrow doctor finds that your life force energy is located exactly at your heart, and there's absolutely no way the Tibetan doctors can allow the patient to go for a surgery. Because tomorrow, we have an experience that those doctors say surgery is very simple, you're going to have 100% success. Surgery is very simple, but the patient come out with a different result. And unfortunately, some common kind of surgery, very simple surgery, proves disastrous. That is because we have not checked. That kind of, we say, mila say that is sumyu the chini guru tamje khaban chig the udan to the yuad chig landa dan khambayins. These, subtle energies, which we call say, which bears our life, which something happens, some kind of the external kind of the interventions can cause a lot of this suffering as well as destabilization in our walking the energies. So therefore, even these are things are being calculated, and during the time of the meditations, and all these the subtle energies are being counted. We say when we breathe like 8,000 86,000 times daily. We have to breathe, and some of the meditators who are very expert, they are able to hold their breath. Able to with this meditation, they are able to hold their breath, and they accumulate their the breathings. So every 72 breathing is a kind of 1 hour they add to their life. Accordingly, then you go on adding it, and with the power of this meditation, by the virtue of the holding this breath, able to hold this breath, you enhance your life expectancy. So therefore, the astrological calculations are also very important. Now I'll come to the last the point of our discussions, that is how the Tibetan medicines plays its own traditional role in our Tibetan exiled communities. We have in Dharamsala, under the Tibetan exiled government, health department, which also oversees the established a lot of primary healthcare centers in almost all the Tibetan settlements. Through the what we call as modern systems of medicines. But we also have now 50 branches all over India and Nepal, and almost majority of these branches are the Tibetan settlements, and which looks after the health of the Tibetan people in the settlements. And now we find that if you do a statistical kind of the findings, most of the chronic diseases, especially chronic liver problems, digestive problems, gastric, acidity, ulcers and asthmatic conditions, arthritis and kidney problems, all these patients go to the Tibetan doctors, because Tibetan medicine helps much better in completely curing these chronic diseases, though it may take some more time, but if you are a little bit patient, it gives you a very good relief. But in some kind of emergency cases or acute cases, then you find that a lot of people go to the allopathic kind of medicines, which gives quick relief. But in our the Tibetan settlements, the Tibetan medicine plays a very important role in the maintenance of the health. Even the medical system throughout the history, there was in Tibet there was absolutely no other kind of medical systems. It is only the Tibetan medical system which has been practiced throughout the kind of the history of the Tibetan people. only the dependence on the Tibetan medicines. Similarly, in the exiled Tibetan setup, particularly the Tibetan medicines, we find that very effective in treating the many chronic kind of diseases. And we give herbal medications, we give the herbal decoctions, we give the cleansing kind of detoxifications, and then the various kind of physical therapies. And nowadays the situation is definitely changing. Earlier, some 20 years before, we don't see any diabetes cases in the Tibetan people. Now we see a lot of Tibetans suffering from diabetes, which we call as the Indian disease, because Indian people like a lot of sweets. In Tibet we don't take sweets. We are more happy with salt. So because of now that's kind of adaptations, we find that a lot of people are suffering with diabetes. And I think out of 48, almost like 16 to 18 kind of hospitals, Tibetans, the health centers are located in major Indian cities. And you'll be surprised to find that, almost like when we try to collect the statistics in a year, 96% of the patients who are taking Tibetan medicines are Indians, all Indians. And they are very happy with the Tibetan medicines because even the diabetes, even the arthritis, the severe arthritic conditions, even they have been taking the diabetes, the tablets and insulin for lifelong. Asthmatic, they are dependent on the pump, the inhalers and the steroid kind of pumping for lifelong. Now with 6 months medicines of the Tibetan herbs, they have absolutely they don't have to use this pump. They are absolutely healthy. And if you look at the patients' comments in various hospitals, you'll find that it's dramatic the improvement with these kind of cases. Even with the cancers, I have dealt with the cancer patients for almost 20 years. We have in India, even in Bangalore, even in Chennai, even in Hyderabad, we have almost like total of 600 to 700 cancer patients who are totally dependent on the Tibetan medicines. But some of them are taking both chemotherapy, some of them are radiation therapies, along with the Tibetan medicine. Some of them have no more chemos. Having a rich kind of traditions, of the Tibetan Buddhist, the Buddhist practices and the medicines. That is one of the the contributions which we are very happy, that we are very proud that we are able to make it. And now the question is that more and more patients, more and more people are depending on the Tibetan medicine. Is becoming more. But how do you really make it possible that Tibetan medicines can be practiced worldwide without having any the kind of legal problems? So with that research, now it's a very important thing. We have been advised that until and unless you prove that your medicine works, there is no chance that the scientific community will accept your kind of kind of claims. So therefore, we have now even carried out the collaborative clinical research studies on the cancers and on the diabetes, on the hypothyroid kind of problems, and we find that hypothyroid is completely curable. You don't have to depend on L-troxin for lifelong. Even 6 months, 1 month, kind of 1 year kind of treatment can totally even balance your thyroid kind of functions. So these are our kind of small efforts in which we are taking so as to build up more kind of collaborative research, more interactions with the modern. And that is also one of my effort in requesting and Dr. Sri Shakyala how best we can at least have these collaborations so that the contributions, the essence of the Tibetan medicines could be well understood Otherwise, if you have a tendency in Tibetan medicine, it maybe could be some, some recitations of the mantras, that the Gata Sarahata Samaya Sam Buddhaya. It's not like that. It have a lot of kind of the important aspects, important kind of factors which we can really contribute richly to the easing of the diseases, even in the planning of the kind of the primary health. Like say in our Tibetan society, we have mabu Tibetan, which means the health of the child and the mother, which we consider as very important, because when the child of the mother and the child is very good, then you have whole production of the healthy kind of human beings, because we are trying to tackle the health at the very initial kind of very the primary level. Therefore, even the Buddha has taught this, Gyawung Aljuk, in the study of the embryology. Buddha has taught these embryological studies to Kungawa, the Ananda, as a very, in looking at the, what you call it, the future of many, many years of eons of, things to come. So then, we can have a really quality and productive kind of human race. For each of throughout the embryogenesis, each week have a different flow of the energy, which is responsible for the formation of the various body parts of the fetus, and its kind of the proper the energy. So during that 9-month state of the mother's kind of pregnancy, if we are not able to help the mother and child, then we have series of problems. And if you practically, if you look at the mother's kind of problems, 70% of the problems are during the pregnancy and after the pregnancy, and hospital-borne kind of diseases. So therefore, in the end child, how to bring out the best kind of very active, responsible, healthy kind of child, and even the rituals. In the first month of the childbirth, what kind of service you can do to your own kind of child, what kind of rituals you have to practice, what kind of preventive measures you have to take it. Then within 6 months time, within 1 year time, how to in each and every stages of the child's kind of year, there are certain ritual, certain kind of preventive kind of preventive kind of aspects which the parent have to to do. So these are some of the contributions of the Tibetan medicines, even in the primary healthcare kind of system. So with this, I would like to stop here and thank you so much for your kind attention. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Do you want to say something about what you have here? Or,
yeah. These are some of the samples of the herbs which I have brought. I have also written its indications, just to have a, if you have not seen Tibetan medicines before, Tibetan pills before, so different kind of, the pills and different form. And this is one which I would like to, just let me take 1 minute to explain this. Let's say this one. This is actually called money pills. And this is a kind of one perfect example of the one potentiated medicines. But these medicines are not potentiated medicines, which means that these are the regular medicines, with made in our pharmacological, the center. But this is also medicine which are made in pharmacological center. But then this is transported to the temple, and let's say, for example, in Dharamsala, the men kind of Tsuglakang, and for 1 month total, the thousands of monks, they get together to have a special rituals, with chantings, and these herbs are put in one big kind of vase. Almost half of the vase are filled up with this herb, and at the end of the 1 month, you feel that whole vessel is being filled up with these pills. So like it multiplies. So with the help of these spiritual practices, the initiation, the power of the mantras, the power of the prayers, the life get infused in this kind of pills.
These are the precious pills, right?
No, it's not precious. This is the precious pills. These are the precious pills which takes almost, let's say, 6 months to prepare. 6 months to prepare in a very solitary kind of confinement. You know, those pharmacists who prepare this. Now we can say pharmacists. Earlier they were not pharmacists. They are lamas, they are monks, they are doctors, they are So it is prepared in such a kind of the sacred and solitary confinement that even no women are allowed inside, no the dogs are allowed. I'm sorry to say that, but it's just part of the the preparation. So that the rituals, chantings, and each and every step forms are very important. Each and every step. So this have not only the kind of the herbal kind of the ingredients, but also many minerals as well, and the precious stones and semi-precious like gold, silver, all these factors. And because there's some when I asked why women are not allowed when during the special preparations, because the lamas and during the chantings they get distracted. And these are the some of the herbs which I find it very interesting to explain to you. This is actually we call it Garuda 5. It's a chunga, but you can also consider this as a kind of Tibetan herbal antibiotics. For simple kind of cold or cough or throat infections, just 4 to 5 pill in almost 2-3 days enough to give you a very good relief, without really, going for, the vaccinations or so. This can really be as a preventive kind of herbs. And there's some of our herbal product like healing incense during the meditations. Some of you have a stress, tension, you're not able to sleep better. You breathe in slowly and keep it under your bedside, and then you sleep, and you have proper sleep also. These are hair oils and therapeutic massage oil, which are very good, particularly if you have severe joint pains, neurological pains, and even for to relieve your stress and tensions. And there's some of the facial products. You look more beauty, more skin kind of. But these are very healthy. Even you have cracked lips, cracking lips, rough skins. We have made this taking into consideration the what do you call it, the constitution of the patient. Because if you are stress type, you will find that your skins are very rough. Your skin is very rough. No matter how much oil you put, skin will always remain rough, and dry. If you are Tipa, your skins have more black moles. If you are Tipa type, black patches in the skin. So these are made accordingly to suit your body constitution, so that when you apply more and more, then you get a very kind of what do you call it, quality kind of relief. Yeah. Thank you.
Any more questions to Dr. Dorjee?
Dr. Neshar, I know that the Tibetan medicine, Ayurveda too, are really beautiful, complex, but very orderly medical systems. I'm wondering how conscientious you are in following your own personal diet and lifestyle with the Tibetan medical system. Are you very conscientious? Are you aware every time you eat something?
Oh yes, to be very honestly, to some extent. Sometimes you have a problem when you look at some, when you are in some buffet. Let's say you are having a buffet, and you see a lot of the different kind of foods. But then I tend to eat a little more, even feel not all the 4 chambers, of course, but at least 3.5 chambers. And then, but I always make the point to when you eat something, let's say, even I tell my friends, when it's some little oily, little more rich food, then I stop them from, taking Coca-Cola or ice cold water. With the heavy food, rich food, you can't, this doesn't really go with ice cold water. It's always better take boiled hot water or some, what we call it, the Japanese type of post-digestive tea, which goes very well with, helps to absorb the fats better and take the digestion to better.
Thank you.
I have a question. As you mentioned in the long history of Tibetan medicine, it really conscientiously absorbs different traditions like the Greek, the Ayurvedic, and the Chinese, right? I'm wondering how how much it is absorbing the modern Western medicine technique. In the case of the stomachache you mentioned, I have personal experience that the cupping really helps. But without the modern imaging, you don't know if it's a simple stomachache or an ulcer or even a cancer or a heart problem manifested as a stomach problem because of the cold location. As I know, Chinese medicine doctors in China, starting about 20 years ago, have been trained in Western medicine so that they can also prescribe and order tests. So I don't know if this is happening now.
Well, this is a very interesting question. Earlier, probably let's say 20 years before, 30 years before, most of the Tibetan doctors, they tend to be occupied with their own kind of, teachings. And they don't have much time for other kind of, the studies, including the modern kind of, nowadays in our medical college and Dharamsala, even the syllabus are prepared by the Central Council of the Tibetan Medicines, in which we have, every year have a, anatomy, physiology, and all these things are being, taught, and then also, considered very important as part of, like a fully equipped kind of, to bring out a fully equipped doctor or the physicians. And although there are, as you said, there are a lot of things which, especially in terms of the anatomy, physiological kind of things, which the Tibetan, physicians or students can learn a lot from the modern kind of, the science. But as you said, also, these are very important. Now we have, the doctors, especially in the major Indian cities, who are able to really, give out a prescription, not only the prescription, but a reference kind of letter stating that, okay, your pulse looks like, okay, very thick. I find that your pulse is very, very thick. Let's say, for example, it's very, very thick and sluggish. And I find that it's not really flowing properly. All the energy seems to be blocked and looks very heavy. And probably you might be getting a stomach pain or a pain in the liver region, and you might be getting a headache, some heaviness in the head. I would suggest you go for ultrasonography to check the liver, whether the liver is, having any problems, or go for the lipid profile test to see your, what do we call it, SDL, the good cholesterol may be lower, your bad cholesterol may be higher because you have been eating. With the pulse, we can say, okay, you must be eating a lot of sweets. You must be eating a lot of junk food. With the pulse, you are able to, understand. That depends on the, doctor's experience as well as, your own expertise of the mind, how you interpret the different findings accordingly. So these are very important. And then majority of the cases, patients, okay, then when you bring out this result, we can definitely, there was, even just to give you one example, in Bangalore we have one, the commissioner of police, who was very well known to us also. And he told me, and I told him, probably said that your liver looks very sluggish and your cholesterol may be very high. You must check your cholesterol. I want you to do the liver function test. He said, doctor, I did it almost like, maybe 2 months before, kind of, they call it executive test. All the tests were being done. Their doctor said nothing. It looks absolutely normal. But I said, you should be having this. Just, or you just send me the report and I'll let you know. When I read all his report, I found that his cholesterol were high. There was a fatty liver infiltrations. But somehow, in the modern hospitals, they are so kind of, specialized. They don't want to talk about all these things, And when you go for the radiologist, they only do the kind of, radiological things, and they keep quiet about what is the result. They don't want to tell the patients. And when you have a problem with the, severe urine infection, urologist, if you find a urologist, very good. Otherwise, the heart, specialist will never tell you about these things. So it's so divided. The patient have a problem really finding the, what do you call it, the issue of the health.
Question?
When you're working with the pulse and you have this intuitive ability to scan the patient's body, how is that? Is that trained through an initiation, or how is that trained?
Both. Actually, if you really study only the pulse, let's say for example, it may take almost 6 months, to know that there are 13 different kind of ways, characteristics, of the pulse, the understanding the pulse, the timing of the pulse, the position of the pulse, the 6 different characteristics of the hot pulse, 6 different characteristics of the cold pulse, and all these things, so which you might find it's very simple, and different characteristics. But when you really practice, and you say, how does the pulse of the cancer beat? It's very difficult to say, although it is mentioned in the text. How does the pulse of the diabetes or the hypertensions, it all comes through your own kind of experience. I used to tell my own kind of friends and my own kind of students that, more you are close, more you take interest in your pulse readings, more information the pulse will give it to you. If you simply say, okay, and finish it, and just going by the signs and symptoms, you have stomach pain, you give some, medicines for the, to relieve the pain. It doesn't, and then that I used to say that even the nurses and other common people can do it. So it, it takes some kind of time to get, attuned to the pulse readings. And there are, of course, initiations also, in which you have special kind of initiations to attune yourself to the the understanding the pulse. Even we say Ta Hamo, like a goddess of the goddess of the the goddess who really kind of have some special lineages, some special kind of information of the various the characteristics of the pulse. And if you do those initiations and with the help of meditations, and you will get more attuned, to that the goddess of the pulse. Then you receive not only with your own kind of expertise, but some help, with the more understanding of the pulse.
Are those yoga tantra initiations then?
There are specific initiations, especially Tai Hamo. I mean, like you have a special rituals of this, the goddesses. God and goddesses, and which you have to receive through the very, learned lamas or practitioners, who have received such kind of initiations from their own predecessors. Not only just people like me cannot give such initiations like that. So I need to have a lot of experience and prior kind of initiations. Then only I can give these initiations to you.
Thank you very much, and can you join thanking Dr. Dorjee for his support.